Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. We are super excited to do a quarterbacks ranking show for you. That'll be at the end of the episode. Me and Zach have ranked the quarterbacks for 2025, and we have even made ourselves mad with our own rankings. So when we get to that point, if you're like, JR and Zach, you've made me so mad, our quarterback is so much better than what you've ranked them. Well, rest assured, we are both mad at our rankings as well. Zach, are you going to be able to make it through the episode despite your anger?
I think I'll be able to persevere, much like the Ohio State Buckeyes persevered to win their first national championship in 10 years. Not that I'm, you know, going to be
Not
overly
bragging or anything.
exuberant or brag about it or anything.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I mean, I literally texted you with this exercise saying, I hate this list. It's the worst list I've ever made. I hope it burns. I didn't put all that, but that's how I felt.
I felt that when you said your things to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll probably feel that. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Deeply, deeply sorry.
Deeply sorry.
Uh, let's see who's here. We got Sean. He commented beforehand. He said, I think Manis definitely deserves to be near the top going into next year. He finished seventh based on QBR and is one of the few returning in the top 10. We will talk about Athan Manis. Don't you worry. We will
I'm
talk about
sorry.
him.
I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry I failed
If that
you.
gives you any type of indication. Okay. John is here. Says Penn State's building a nice cast of coaching and bringing back key players, only to lose to Ohio State once again. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not going to be super confident about it. Ohio State, they've shown they can lose some games in the regular season and then win the championship. So you never know. So. Billy Tuesday says good evening, Billy. Thanks for being here. And then Philip says, "Oh, I left the Heisman odds up there, didn't I?" Yes, we will talk about that. Don't you worry, Philip. That's one of the reasons why I used I used the Heisman odds from FanDuel because they didn't have Luke Altmaier in there. So don't worry, Philip. That will definitely be addressed. So John says, "But are you going to trust James Franklin in big games?"
Mm.
Here's my thing, and well, hold on. Let's do our rapid fire stuff first. We'll do our rapid fire stuff, and then we'll talk about Penn State and Jim Knowles. So there's
Good
just a
catch
few.
there, JR. Good catch.
Thank you. There's a few news items that happened this weekend in the Big Ten that I just want to address really fast, and then we'll talk about Jim Knowles, and then after Jim Knowles discussion, we'll talk about Heisman, and then we'll get to our quarterback rankings here at the end. So we will get to all of that. Don't worry. But first things first, I want to talk about USC hires Chad Bowden as its new general manager. Chad Bowden was the general manager over at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame getting a lot of their people lost right now. Al Golden going to the Bengals to be the defensive coordinator. Chad Bowden now going over to rival USC to be their general manager over there. Zach, did you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, you're getting a guy who just elevated a program from mediocre to decent over the past several years to championship level. So it's great for USC because that's where they want to go.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I think this was a good move by USC. You're taking somebody away from a rival, and that's always going to hurt the other fan base a little bit. And as far as I'm concerned, if he's proven he can do it at Notre Dame, he should be able to do it at USC. Now USC has done a good job of bringing in talent. One of their issues has been trying to keep that talent. They've done a good job of getting guys committed, which to me does signal some kind of like recruiting issue, right? There's something in the background that maybe isn't going as well there. So, what can Chad Bowden bring? I don't think we'll know really until it happens, but I do think that, USC has shown some struggles in recruiting and getting guys to stay committed and stuff like that. So, as far as I'm concerned, if Lakin Riley, the athletic director, whoever it is bringing somebody in to do that, more power to him. So, I like where things are trending right now for USC. Lost a good number of guys in the transfer portal, but I think they're adding some guys and doing some stuff behind the scenes as well that makes sense. So
yeah, I wonder if getting the right defensive pieces, the right defensive guys, is a big part of this.
yes, for sure. For sure. All right. Next thing is that Oregon receives national championship recognition from two different sites, from Anderson and Hester and Wolf as well, the second NCAA recognized national champion major selector to crown Oregon the national champions this season. Zach, this is kind of a wild story. Oregon fans are even having a fun time kind of joking around about it a little bit. I don't think there's any doubt in the world that Ohio State deserves to be the national champions this year. They went 1-1 with Oregon, but they had a better resume overall, and they did what they were supposed to do in winning the college football playoffs. So, whatever Wolf and Anderson and Hester sees here, I guess more power to them, but it doesn't make much sense to me.
Do they give out a crystal football?
Not that we're aware of. I don't know of a national championship celebration that's going on in Eugene this week. So,
Yeah, it's fake. I
yeah.
don't care. Sorry, Oregon fans. It's not real.
I wonder. I think they're gonna unclaim him though. That would be really funny if they claimed him because then nobody can make the joke about zero national championships anymore. You know?
Yeah, they just make fun of them
Wow.
as they should if they
I guess
claim
they
that
should.
national champion. It's like UCF back in 2017. We're the national champions of college football. You guys would get your doors blown off. Come on. Like it's
Didn't they actually get rings?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they got
Like they
rings and
got rings made
everything.
and everything.
And they all got made fun of.
Yeah.
And I mean, that
Deservedly
was with a
so.
14 playoff. Like you could kind of make a case for a 14 playoff that you were not in, but a
Yeah.
12-team playoff where you were down 34-0. What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, not good, not good. But hey, I think Oregon fans are doing the right thing. Just have fun with it, joke
Yeah,
about it,
absolutely.
just kind of play around and say, "Hey, we do have national championship now." So, I think that's funny. All right, then our last news item before we get to the Penn State hiring of Jim Knowles, college football national championship viewership averaged 22.1 million. That was down from last year. I do think there's a little bit more of a conversation to have here, Zach, as I do think that it's interesting that two of the largest brands in all of college football didn't, they failed to really deliver. If you listen to Kirk Herbstreit when he was on Andy and Ari with their podcast, he was talking how much, oh, this is exactly what ESPN wanted. Can you imagine the viewership and yada, yada, yada? And then it comes out and it's 22.1 million. It's like, it's a lot, don't get me wrong, but I'm pretty sure Michigan and Washington last year was like 24, 25 million.
Yeah.
So this didn't really blow the doors off like maybe some people had thought. Do you have any thoughts to, the lower number? Does it concern you? What's your thoughts, Zach?
I mean, I think there's several factors. One, it was inauguration day. And so you have a lot of people already watching. Second, it's a Monday night. It's MLK. So it's a holiday. I'm not saying those are reasons why it was low. It's just there's a lot of factors. But then I think the biggest one, and I think we've already talked about it ad nauseum on this show, it's 3 weeks beyond New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Like we're in the midst of the NFL playoffs. Heck, I mean, the AFC Championship game is happening as we speak, and the Bills are trying to do us all a solid and leading by 1 currently. So that's a good thing. But the problem is when you're that knee deep into the NFL, people start to transition. And I think the natural rhythm of college football is, the bowl games happened, and then there's one final game. Well, the bowl games happened, and then they happened again. And then it's like, there's another game. Like, even as an Ohio State fan, I started to feel a little fatigued. Like, I loved it, but I'm like, I would like it to be done sooner. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. So I'll actually say, I think 22.1 million is a pretty great number.
Oh, yeah.
For all of that, like all of those circumstances. But I think it points to they need to move the season back to a more traditional time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. And Philip actually brought up what my point was going to be. They only aired this on ESPN. And if you know anything about the way things are going right now with cable and everything like that, like ESPN as a property, people are no longer, trying to, really get on every single, cable package or whatever else they might have. And so, I mean, I know my dad, he doesn't even have ESPN. He doesn't care for ESPN. Now, I think he probably got it for the national championship because huge Buckeyes fan. But Like that's something that he doesn't normally get. So how many, you know, other Big Ten teams are out there that don't have ESPN because their teams never play on it, and they were just like, oh, I'll watch the highlights in the morning, or oh, I'll follow it along on Twitter, type of deal, you know. And then you're right, the inauguration, everything else that was going on that day, you know, you have no idea, but I do think it also adds to it that you know this probably was a little bit of no SEC fatigue, right? Last year, you probably had some people, you know, kind of tuning in that were maybe from the SEC and stuff like that. It was the first season there wasn't an SEC team in it for X number of years. It was a long time. Now 2 years in a row with no SEC teams in it. Like, I mean, how many, how many, you know, Arkansas fans were watching Cops instead? You
Yeah.
know, like SEC cheers for each other. That's the difference between the Big Ten and the SEC. I go and I watch SEC shows, and they're all buddy buddy with one another. They're all like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, you will have a good season this year. Hey, yeah, beat that out of conference team that you're gonna play this season." Like they're all buddy buddy with each other. Doesn't happen. Like our chat is you know fine. You guys don't argue and stuff like that a whole lot, which I wouldn't really care if you did, as long as it didn't like you know get bad. but but as far as I'm concerned, like there are many Big Ten fans that just absolutely cannot stand each other in the Big Ten, and it makes it really really hard to try and like cheer on one another. And I don't know if you necessarily need to cheer on your conference, but you know I do think that the BCS and college football kind of created that in some ways, and it's still lingering over. So, what's your thoughts there, Zach? You think that the SEC not being in it impacted things at all?
Maybe a little bit. Like I think people like I still think it's going to take time for people to not assume that the SEC is the better conference with better teams. Like I
Yeah.
still think people are like, well, but if Georgia had Carson Beck, dot dot dot. And it's like, no, Notre Dame beat them. Like they were the better team. They were more physical. And even though it was close, like I think Georgia could have beaten Notre Dame, sure, but like I think Notre Dame wins probably 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 against Georgia. And I don't think Carson Beck was a big reason why.
Yeah, I don't think Carson Beck is worth 13 points.
Yeah. I so I I think but I think there's still a perception that they're the best. And so I'm curious what the number would have been if Ohio State, Georgia, or Notre Dame, Alabama was there. Like I wonder if that would have been a better gauge. I think also Dave's here in the chat. He makes a good point. I think a lot of people were trying to make arguments of why this game would be close because I think it was clear that Ohio State was probably a good two possession favorite over Notre Dame.
Yeah, they were what
And
8.5 point favorites.
eight and
So
a half point favorites, and a lot of people were, I think a lot of people were trying to talk themselves out of, more than a 7 point win because the reality is, I think everybody out there was thinking Ohio State's going to crush Notre Dame, which I don't think was a wrong thought, but and then it happened. It was 28. There's 31-7. I think once it's 14-7 and Ohio State stopped them, I think there's probably a lot of people who turned it off and was like, this is not entertaining. So
yeah, yeah, and I mean Notre Dame made the comeback, so they made it close there at the end. But yeah, I mean I don't I don't know if there's really any great explanation to it. You know, Dave's here is right. Like the SEC wasn't in it last year, so you know how much does that really mean? I do wonder if maybe, like I said, the 2 years in a row impacts things at all. But I'm just speculating at this point. I don't know.
yeah,
It's just an interesting thing to me because not so much because I think it should have done better numbers, but primarily because, like I said, Kirk Herbstreit went on that Andy and Ari Wasserman show and talked about how like this is exactly what ESPN wants. This is gonna be great, and we're gonna have the best numbers we've ever had. And it's like, well, they were less than last year,
yeah,
so it's like
yeah.
maybe ESPN does want to try and get an SEC team in the national championship game. Who would have
Mhm.
thought? But yeah, so. All right, let's talk about our next topic here. A lot of good discussion in the chat. Appreciate everybody for sharing your thoughts, and I'm sure there will be many thoughts on this. Feel free to share your thoughts on Penn State hires Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles. So just to kind of paint the picture here for you a little bit. So Jim Knowles and Ohio State wins the national championship. And after they win the national championship, rumors are that Jim Knowles had contacted Oklahoma about potentially being their defensive coordinator. And then after the national championship, Jim Knowles contacts Penn State about possibly being their defensive coordinator. Jim Knowles seems to be upset and not happy at Ohio State. So he wants to move on. There are so many different rumors, so many different stories at this point, just take everything with a grain of salt. Who knows what's true and who knows what's not? But he felt like Penn State was the right place for him. Obviously, they have a championship that they're going after next year, and it's also the state that he's from. So this kind of worked out together. And then also, when you get paid to be the highest paid coordinator in college football history, that might be a little enticing too. Who knows? But Zach, I want to first talk about Penn State and what this means for them, and then we'll talk about Ohio State. And then we'll talk about some of the rumors about Chip Kelly and stuff like that. So first, let's talk about Penn State. Like, to you, does this elevate your like Penn State in your mind at all? Like, is this going to impact your thought process going into Penn State as possibly a better favorite to win the Big Ten, a better favorite to win the national championship, or are you kind of like, Jim Knowles is a good coordinator, but they were going to get a good coordinator anyway. What's your thoughts?
I don't know, because like Penn State has had some mediocre offensive coordinators over the past couple years. They have not had mediocre defensive coordinators. Manny Diaz was great. Tom Allen, I thought, did a really good job.
Tom Allen was very good this year, I felt like.
Yeah, I thought he was great. And I don't know. I think Jim Knowles at Ohio State was excellent, but he had some tendencies that were concerning. They struggled to adjust to the defense in year one, even with some good players. Jim Knowles really wanted the jack position to work. It didn't work. And after the Oregon game this past year, we saw some of the same reversions that we saw back in 2022 with some of the deep balls, exposing them, leaving their corners on islands. And that was exactly what he was told not to do in 2023. And so Ryan Day and Jim Knowles and I think Larry Johnson had a meeting after that Oregon game. It's like, we got to fix this. And I think where I come down to is how much of the defense was changed and was just the brainchild of Jim Knowles, and how much was it the players? How much was it Ryan Day getting involved? How much was it Larry Johnson? My point in that is I think a lot of Penn State fans are saying, all right, we're really loading up. And I would just say possibly, but there's room on the table for there to be some massive expectations that aren't met, because he wants to install his system his way. And if things don't work out, like, it could leave himself very vulnerable to big plays. And I think we saw that, like, everybody's saying November 1st. Do you think Jeremiah Smith's not going to expose any weaknesses in that defense? Like, that's going to be a really tough challenge. And I think they also get Oregon at home. He's going to have a tough road to hoe. And I am just not sure that transforming Penn State's system into his in year one is like a definite. It could be. They have really good personnel. Like, so it's not like they don't have any personnel. Certainly they have quite a bit. But I I'm not sure it's like the grand slam. I think it might be a double that turns into a home run, but I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a grand slam, but I really like it. Like, I
Oh
think
yeah,
if
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
Penn State and you were thinking like, okay, who are we going to bring in as our defensive coordinator? Like, you just went out and got the defensive coordinator that won the national championship and
Hmm.
was a big reason why. Now, there's all those kind of different stories behind the scenes of like, Ryan Day and them didn't get along on the defensive line and everything else. Like, there's all those stories, and I think you and I talked about those at one point after. I think it was after the Oregon game we talked about that, but like as far as I'm concerned, I mean, Tom Allen runs a similar defense to what Jim Knowles runs. Obviously, every coach has their own different kind of wrinkles and stuff like that. Tom Allen, likes to deploy the jack position at times, which is kind of like a, not just a, hands in the dirt lineman, but also somebody that stands up. If you saw it this season, you saw Jack Sawyer do that. So even though they may not have had like the true jack position at Ohio State, they did utilize that position at times with Jack Sawyer this season. And so for me, like the way I look at it, if you're Penn State, you couldn't have done any better. And this is
Yep.
what you needed to do. So is it a grand slam? Is it gonna, definitely bring them a national championship? I mean, probably not, but it's the best you could possibly do. And if you're James
Hmm.
Franklin, you went out and did the best you possibly could do. So for
Yep.
me, I think it's spectacular for Penn State. I don't know if it moves them up to like number one for me. I still have some questions about wide receiver, and as much as I do think that Drew Allar is going to improve next year, he did have a really tough game to end the season against Notre
Hmm.
Dame, especially in those final moments. So what are they going to do? Is Andy Kotelnicki going to stick with the run game when it's working better? There could be some different stuff there. I look forward to when Penn State guy and those guys are in PSU gym when they are in the chat again, so that way they can kind of give their thoughts as well. But as far
Hmm.
as I'm concerned, you know it was the best thing that they could do. But I
Yeah.
don't know if like defense has never been the problem at Penn State.
Yeah.
You know,
I I think to that point, and Philip was asking, is Knowles is only great when at OSU? No, no, I don't think that at all. I I think it's a very I would agree actually. It's the best they could do. Absolutely the best they could do. I'm just not sure how I think you want to have sober-minded expectations going into next year as you're installing a completely new defense. And like I think we saw growing pains at Ohio State with Jim Knowles in year 1. And that's maybe my one caution. But I think the second you just alluded to it, the problem at Penn State has not been defense. And so, like, great, they got a great defensive coordinator. I think he's at least a double, if not a triple, if not a home run.
they've had a great defensive coordinator the past 4 years.
Yeah, like great. What are you going to do for offense? They need a stud receiver, and like I think Hudson is, I think Hudson's good. I'm not sure he's much better than what they've had,
We'll see if they can
but
develop him. That's
yeah.
going to be a big piece of it. But yeah, no, I think obviously, I don't think you're saying that, Knowles was only good at OSU. I didn't take that away from what you were saying, but I would say I don't think it's going to take 3 years for Jim Knowles to install his defense at Penn
No,
State
no, no.
because it was similar to Tom Allen and kind of what he ran. So I do think that that could be expedited a little bit more. But you are correct when you're installing new stuff from a different coordinator, different wrinkles, stuff like that. It can be something that takes a little while. That was one of the advantages that Ohio State had this year on defense was they had the same defensive coordinator for 3 years in a row, and a lot of these guys that were starting this year, they started the last 2 years as well. So
Mm-hmm.
they had that going for them. So let's talk about this for Ohio State now. Okay, so Ohio State loses Jim Knowles. They're most likely, um, I mean, I posted about it on Twitter today. They're most likely going to make Matt Gary their next defensive coordinator. He's their safeties coach. They could go out and look at a Jeff Halfley. Phil Parker is another name that's been mentioned. The Indiana defensive coordinator Bryant Haynes, he was mentioned, but he just got a contract extension, as John pointed out in the chat. at Indiana today, so that's huge. Looks like he's not going anywhere anytime soon. I mean, does this give you pause? Does this give you concern for Ohio State next year, uh, Zach? I mean, because one of the things I pointed out with why I thought they should be number one is because they were bringing a lot of stuff back, including both coordinators. That's not happening now.
Yep.
Possibly not going to bring back either coordinator. We'll talk about Chip Kelly here in a second, but like, does this impact Ohio State next year at all for you? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, but not. I think the biggest way it impacts Ohio State is how much it forces Ryan Day to kind of remove himself from that CEO role. That's my biggest concern, especially like if Chip Kelly moves on, I think that's a bigger deal than Jim Knowles. And not because Jim Knowles isn't great, but I like if Chip Kelly moves on, he's got to find an offensive coordinator that he trusts. I think I think that's the big thing here is does he hire someone that he can trust to run the defense and that he doesn't have to be more and more involved? That's I think the key. So like if you really trust Matt Gutierrez and he's competent, like maybe let him grow. But I would make sure whoever you hire, Ryan Day has to trust that guy. He has to like working with him and he has to feel like he doesn't have to micromanage him and he has to feel like he can hold him accountable when he needs to. Like those are all non-negotiables. So it may mean you actually find a less qualified guy to make sure that you trust him and that you like that you're able to let him do his thing and hold him accountable when you need to.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the issue with Jim Knowles and Ryan Day at times was that Ryan Day wanted things to change, but Jim Knowles was kind of, I don't know if stubborn is the right word, but he wanted to do things the way he wanted to do them, which if you hire a defensive coordinator, you should let them do things the way that they want to do them as far as I'm concerned. But if Jim Knowles felt like he wasn't able to implement his entire defense and do everything he wanted to do, by all means, move on. So if I'm Ryan Day, though, like I like it that Ryan Day is getting involved in every area. He's not just involved on offense, but he's trying to do everything in every area. But at the same time, it's like you also got to be careful, Ryan Day. Like if you hire these guys, you got to let these guys do their work, right? I know this is not exactly the same, but and Michigan fans might get mad at me for it. That's fine if you do. I see some similarities. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but I see some similarities. Mike Macdonald came to Michigan, implemented the Ravens system, that style of defense, and then when he went off to, I think he went off to the Ravens. You brought in Jesse Minter, who was kind of like a younger version of Mike Macdonald, and he kind of had the same system and kept perfecting it and did a better job as a younger guy. I don't know if he did. I guess I don't know if he did a better job. He was there when the system was there for longer, so I think he benefited from that. I don't know how Michigan fans would feel like on if one was better than the other. They were both very good. It doesn't need to be one better than the other. But as far as I'm concerned, like you could get something like that with Matt Guerreri coming in,
Mm.
right? Somebody who's maybe a little bit more innovative, maybe somebody who is a little bit younger, a little bit more lively, who can work on that kind of stuff, similar to how Jesse Minter did off of Mike Macdonald's system. Again, not exactly the same thing. Don't come at me, but I'm just saying there is a similarity there.
Mhm.
Um, Joe answered for Billy Tuesday. I apologize, Billy Tuesday. I saw your question and I forgot to say something about it when we were on a Penn State. Billy asked why Tom Allen went. Joe R says Tom's daughter lives in Carolina. It was a major reason he went to Clemson. Yes, I also think that like the whole culture of Clemson and everything like that, you know, I don't think there's any secret. Like it's a very Christian society there. Tom Allen upholds to that. If you followed him at all at Indiana, very much so. LEO, love each other kind of stuff, and he was very much so into that. And so I think that Clemson fits maybe that culture a little bit more. And then also he's very good friends with the offensive line coach. They knew each other from back at Ole Miss, and I heard that impacted things as well. So there's a reason why we went off on Minnesota losing Corey Heatherman, to Miami, and we didn't so much go off on Penn State losing Tom Allen to Clemson because they were for two completely different reasons, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yep.
so all right, last thing. Chip Kelly at Ohio State, offensive coordinator. Don't even know how much we can really say about this right now, just because it is mostly smoke and rumors and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
if Chip Kelly did say go to the NFL somewhere, the Texans and the Jaguars are both pursuing him right now. Looks like he is a favored candidate for both those jobs. If Ohio State did lose Chip Kelly, Zach, are you at like panic mode for Ohio State? What's your thoughts there?
I don't know if I'm at panic mode, but I'm more concerned about that one for sure. I'll give a silver. We're not getting Saban. We're
There you
not
go,
getting
Billy. Get
Saban.
Saban. Go buy him out of his ESPN contract.
Yes. Do you think he wants to deal with the lunatic fringe at Ohio State? No, thanks. The way he's talked about them. Um, yeah, no, that's not happening. I think the one silver lining, not that there's a silver lining, but if there is a silver lining, Ryan Day jumped back in to some of the play design and play calling at the end of the CFP run. And it was much more pass heavy, especially early, which I think then opened up the running lanes. I think when Chip Kelly came, I think a lot of people assumed that the running game would be the most dynamic it's been since 2019. It was not. Like, even with two stud backs, and part of that
It
was maybe
was it was when the offensive line was healthy.
yeah, but even yeah, you're right. I just I just wonder if Ryan Day, if Chip Kelly would leave, would go back to a more pass heavy scheme. But I I wonder if, and Billy Tuesday just hit the nail on the head. Like, I wonder if Chip Kelly is like, I hate recruiting. I don't want to do this. Go to the NFL. Just do ball. Whereas, like, I think Ryan Day actually really loves recruiting. And I think there are other guys in this industry that love recruiting as well as ball. And I think he could get an offensive coordinator to work for him. That would be suitable.
Yeah, I mean he'll definitely be able to get somebody there if nothing else. Like I said, the same thing about the defense. You got the best defensive player in the country, and Caleb Downs on defense. You've got probably the best, if not one of the best, offensive players in the country that doesn't play quarterback, and Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. So why would you not want to go to Ohio State and have that kind of playmaker ability and all that kind of stuff at your disposal? So as far as I'm concerned, they're gonna find somebody, but it does, like you talked about with Jim Knowles going to Penn State, like that just is more to install, that is more to get used to, more for the players to
Yeah.
kind of be updated on and stuff like that. So it's an interesting thing. So all right, everybody, I see some people asking about the quarterback rankings. We're doing that last. All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna talk about Heisman odds overall, and then we're also gonna talk about the Heisman odds for the Big Ten players specifically. And then after we get done with that, we'll reveal our quarterback rankings. Again, we get mad at our quarterback rankings too. So when you see them and you get mad, it's okay. Just know that we're mad too. And you can say all kinds of stuff about us in the chat. We've already said it to ourselves. So,
JR made me do it. No.
yeah.
Yes. No. No.
Yeah. Other way.
I can't point.
Other way.
There we
There you
go.
go.
JR made me do it. There we go.
All right, everybody. We'll be right back. Hit a commercial break, and then we'll talk about the Heisman odds. Stay with us. Have you ever wanted to watch all 22 film, that film the coaches watch? Well, now you can. Introducing the Coaches Film Room. Over at Minutes to Sports, former college coach Zach Smith breaks down film of the most relevant teams in college football with a bit of a Big Ten lead. It's not free, so you'll need to sign up for the Colonel tier, which is $25 a month, but I can attest to you that it is far more worth it than that. With about 4 to 8 games per week, this is worth so much more money, not to mention Zach's analysis, making you a smarter football fan. Go check it out. The links are in the description, minutestosports.com. You won't be sorry. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate everybody being here. Please do like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton if you do that. And then it also would be great if you would share the show. Tell somebody else who's out there that is a Big Ten fan, or maybe they're just a fan of a Big Ten team. Even if they don't watch the live shows, we still give you guys videos and stuff like that. We just did a video, or I just did a video on Rocco Spindler. Right now, it looks like he's looking at 3 different Big Ten teams: Michigan, Indiana, and Nebraska. Looks like Michigan's probably in the lead in that situation, but there are some other circumstances. Maybe he could look at Indiana a little bit more. Maybe look at Nebraska. And then I also mentioned Pat Coogan in there as well, the other Notre Dame transfer. So even if you guys don't like the podcast and big long form stuff, there's short form videos and stuff like that you can get to as well. Yep, PK, you hit right there on the head. Rumors Coogan's girlfriend is at IU. So, and yep. That could be an impact. We'll see. So, all right, Zach, let's hit the Heisman odds here. So these are the Heisman odds from FanDuel. Zach, is there anybody missing on this list that you're like, oh wow, I'm surprised this person isn't on there? In fact, I'm not even like I'm surprised this person isn't on there. I'm like, this is malpractice how you don't have this person on there. Who is missing from this list, Zach?
I think it's the quarterback of the team that I always pick to lose. Luke Altmaier. Why is he not on this list?
I don't know.
Fire everybody at FanDuel. Just fire them all. I'm done.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. They do not have Luke Altmaier on here. I don't know if they just missed him or what. Now, I have been on record saying I don't think it's likely a quarterback from Illinois wins the Heisman, just because I don't know if Illinois they have that brand, but at the same time, like Colorado just had a player win the Heisman. Now, I think, a good amount of that is the brand of Deion Sanders and everything, but still, like, this is something that you can't just completely throw him off the list just because he's from Illinois. So, and there's players from all different kinds of Big Ten schools out here. We got Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Nebraska, Indiana, Wisconsin, who else? Michigan, Iowa. Like, there are tons of different guys on here from tons of different schools. So there's really no excuse for Luke Altmaier not to be on here. I will say he is on Bet Online though. If you want to go over there, I think he is 10,000 plus 10,000 over there. So he's kind of like where Mikey Keene and Damon Williams are on this list. So I think he should be higher than that, but whatever. They make this stuff up based on how people bet and stuff like that a lot. So Zach, let's talk about the Big Ten players first, and then I will list some national players. Actually, should I list the national players first, or should we do Big Ten first?
Well, you got the Big Ten ones up already,
right.
So why don't we?
Okay, so first in the Big Ten, Jeremiah Smith, 1,200. Then Drew Allar, Dante Moore, Julian Sand, Dylan Raiola, Fernando Mendoza, Jaden Maiava, Bryce Underwood, Damon Williams, Mikey Keene, Aiden Childs, Mark Gronowski, Justice Haynes. Is it Haynes or Hayes? I forget.
Haynes.
Okay. Caleb Downs, Evan Stewart, Billy Edwards, Jordan James, who isn't even in college football this year, but apparently they put him on the odds. So 2 double screw up by FanDuel here. And then finally, the very last in all of the odds, Nick Marsh from Michigan State. I thought that was cool that he made himself on there. So, Zach, any thoughts here on the Big Ten players and their Heisman odds?
Man, it's really hard to, I think, to really figure out different things, because 2 of the top 4 are guys that haven't really played. Julian Sand and Dante Moore. I get it. Like, they're going to be the starting quarterbacks at national championship contending teams. But I think, honestly, my genuine thought here is I don't know who rises to the top, because even Jeremiah Smith, like, all-world player, but he's going to need extreme volume to win the award as a receiver. It's possible, but like, why did Travis Hunter win? Because he played both ways. He had a ton of snaps. So I think Smith could win it for sure. I honestly, Drew Allar, he needs a Jeremiah Smith to be able to do this, because even with this, like, and he had some really good moments in this season, but the reason why they were winning was not because of his production. And he does not have an X factor. So to think that he's going to be able, so I just think the only one out of the top 5 that really seems feasible at this point is Jeremiah Smith. And that's going to be completely dependent on whether he gets the targets. So I think you could make a case for guys down the list more as dark horses. So like Damon Williams, Jaden Mayava, if they have better than expected seasons and their teams do better than expected, but I think a lot of the other guys on this list, like, I'm sorry, an Iowa quarterback's never going to win the Heisman. Like, at least not in this juncture, right?
Who
Jordan,
knows? Tim Lester, he might open it up next season.
maybe,
You have the
maybe.
Caleb Johnson of Iowa quarterbacks.
Yeah, but did Caleb Johnson wasn't even invited to the ceremony, was he?
No,
I don't think he was,
I don't
which
think
is
he was in the top 10, which is crazy.
insane, by the
Which is
way.
crazy.
Again, do better, Heisman people. Gosh. But I don't know. I just look at this list and I'm like honestly, as I'm verbally processing, I'm sorry about that. Dante Moore and Julian Sayin, I might actually put up as my top two based on potential. And then Jeremiah Smith.
I think one of the reasons why Jeremiah Smith is so high is because he does have a brand new quarterback there for him. When you win the Heisman as a receiver, you have to do it with somebody that doesn't necessarily have any hype. You think about when Devontae Smith did it, it's when Mac Jones came in and he was the starter that season. The reason that Marvin Harrison Jr. was kind of getting some love for it was because Kyle McCord refused to throw the ball to anybody else but Marvin Harrison Jr., like 50% of the time. So when you are that dominant and your quarterback is not really spreading the ball around. Now, do I think Julian Sayin is only going to throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith? No, I think he's a better quarterback than that. But you could see the scenario where Julian Smith doesn't quite have the name recognition of like a Drew Allar or a Fernando Mendoza or something like that. Like if Drew Allar or Fernando Mendoza was Jeremiah Smith's quarterback, I think you'd see Jeremiah Smith lower in the odds here. But the fact that you have somebody starting their very first year and Julian Sayin, who is a big name, he was a big time recruit, but it's still his first year starting, that gives him a better chance of winning the award. I do think it's interesting that Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene are so close with their odds. And John Jacobs was asking, what do these numbers mean? I'm not going to explain everything about the betting. Like if you want to, go to a betting show and learn about that, I don't bet personally. I think they're interesting because they kind of, give you public perception a lot of times, and also what the people who are running these sites think. Who's going to win the award and stuff like that. Closer to zero, obviously you are. Is the closer you are to favorite, but if anything is minus, then you're the favorite in that situation. So Jeremiah Smith being the closest to zero makes him the biggest favorite in the Big Ten, if that makes sense. So that's kind of your general idea there. If anybody else is better and you want to explain it further to John Jacobs in the chat, feel free. But yeah, what's your thoughts on Bryce Underwood and Mikey Keene here being so close together, Zach?
Well, they definitely have greater hope in Underwood starting at being at plus 6,000, or at least that if he starts, he will have a bigger impact than Mikey.
Or
Keene.
the public has greater hope in him starting.
That's a good point. But I don't think either of them have much of a shot to win the Heisman, if I'm honest.
Who'd you say? I apologize.
I don't think either of them have a shot to win the Heisman.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to be an interesting situation this season at Michigan. Now, if Michigan goes, like 11-1 or something like that, and Bryce Underwood starts all year, there's a good chance there, I think. But yeah, they'd have to have a really, really good season in order to make that happen. All right. Anybody on here you think should be higher? Like, should Caleb Downs be higher? Should Aiden Childs be higher? Damon Williams, should he be higher? Any thoughts here on that?
No, man, I feel like I'm such a wet blanket. No, I just don't think any of them have proven much. Like even like Mayava, and I mean this is gonna be a good segue for our quarterback rankings because it's like there's just not a lot of guys where you're like, oh yeah, you've proven yourself. Like you've had a couple of games. So like I just don't. To be honest though, I looked at the rest of the field. And I know this is where you're going next. And I'm like, why is Garrett Nussmeier the favorite? My goodness, what are we doing? Like, I understand.
Because he's one of the only quarterbacks returning. Like, he and Cade Klubnik Drew Allar, and Nico Iamaleava.
Have
I'm
they
still
seen
struggling
LSU?
from that from the Tennessee Ohio
Yeah,
State preview.
yeah. Have they seen LSU's coach? Have they seen? Well, I guess that might actually
He
help
did
his
get, as I
cause.
say, he did get Jaden Daniels, but I'd argue that was probably more the offensive coordinator than
Yeah,
Brian Kelly.
that's fair. That's
So,
fair.
yeah. So the national rank here of everything, it goes plus 800. So that's not really like super favorite. That means that they're not super confident in somebody winning the Heisman. But it starts Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, Cade Klubnik, Jeremiah Smith, Drew Allar, Nico Iamaleava, Dante Moore, Lenora Sellers, Julian Sayin, Carson Beck. So that's your top 10 right there. I think it's crazy that Julian Sayin is ahead of Carson Beck personally, but I think that just goes to show how bad of a season Carson Beck had last year and how little people believe in him.
Does anyone really believe in Miami?
Mario Cristobal.
Yeah, which leads to the next question. Does anyone really believe in Mario Cristobal?
That's fair. Fair.
He has one
One of
claim
the
to fame.
best
He beat
things
Ohio State in 2021. That's it.
I say one of the best things that ever happened to Oregon was Mario Cristobal moving on because Dan Lanning is 10 times the coach that
It's
Mario
so
Cristobal
true.
has any school ever upgraded more from a coach leaving their school and them hiring another one? Like that's not like group of 5 and like you kind of get lucky on somebody. Like that just if I'm an Oregon fan, I thank God every day that Mario Cristobal left and he sent Dan Lanning into my life.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
Preach it. Preach it,
Let's
JR.
see. Let's see if anybody Troy V, thanks for being here. Troy he says, I was talking about Underwood. If he starts, it would be a lot of faith to think that he finds instant success. Not many true freshmen have succeeded. My thought on this, and this can kind of segue into our rankings a little bit because you have Mikey Keene as a projected starter. I have Bryce Underwood. My thought on this is that I think Sherrone Moore doesn't have a choice. I think you got to start Bryce Underwood. The amount of hype that the media is going to give this kid and everything else, like, and it's deservedly so. Have you seen him in a uniform? Have you seen him throwing a ball? Like it looks really, really good. But I think if you start Mikey Keene game one, like it's not going to be pretty for him because literally every little thing he does is going to be dissected by those fans of Michigan, in my opinion, because they're going to be so excited about Bryce Underwood. I'm not saying they're wrong to do so. Again, I'm somebody that thinks it's good for fans to have expectations, but I just think it's going to be really, really hard for Mikey Keene to have a successful season if he starts the entire year because he's always going to have that over his shoulder of like Underwood should start. Underwood should be number one. What's your thoughts, Zach?
Yeah.
Because I think Troy does make a good point. Like not many freshmen have succeeded, but it's the fans, right?
Yeah. Well, so I think here's the problem is I think the fans are going to say we want Bryce Underwood. I do think there is some I think this is how I think this is going to go. I think Mikey Keene's going to start and then Underwood's going to take his spot as Keene starts to struggle. Cuz I think he will struggle. He doesn't have the offensive weapons that other quarterbacks have. They're upgrading for sure, but they're not.
They got better players. They don't have that number one guy yet, right? Like they need that number one go-to receiver. Donovan McCauley can possibly be that, but he's not been that in his career yet. So you can't say that for sure that he's going to be that.
Yeah. And I understand people saying like Underwood's the number one recruit. Not necessarily because other sites have him below Tavian St. Clair, but
rivals.
Yeah. But I'm just, I am hesitant. I mean, I think, we'll probably get the guys from Maize and Brew on at some point and ask them about it. And they'll probably be like Underwood for Heisman and for president. I'll be like, okay, there you go.
All of the above.
Yeah. But like, I hesitate just because, I get Dylan Raiola from a year ago, but like Raiola was coming to replace guys that should not have been quarterbacks, period. Like Harburg was playing tight end.
Yeah.
Like I mean, come on, guys. Seriously, Uh, Mikey Keene's a decent level quarterback, and so that's why I'm like, I'm not saying that he won't overtake Keene. I am just hesitant to say that it's definite.
Yeah. Yeah, Troy says we just saw Raiola struggle last year. He's kind of rated almost as high and went to a boring offense too. I listen. I don't think you're wrong, Troy. Raiola struggled a lot last year. Dante Moore struggled his first year as well. I think you grow and stuff like that and get better. Um, so if Sharon Moore thinks he's got a really really good team this year that can compete and go to the playoffs, maybe he does start Mikey Keene, and if he
Mm-hmm.
thinks he's that good. But I just don't know if Mikey Keene's that good.
Yeah.
How much better is he than a true freshman? I don't know. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to find out. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, Dave's here says one and rival sucks. Yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't too happy with that. And they didn't even have Tavian or Bryce Underwood number one. They had
Yeah, that's somebody
the
else.
Alabama dude, Keelan Russell. That was the biggest thing to me. It's like, why do you have Keelan Russell? Like, I could understand having Bryce Underwood two and Tavian St. Clair one. Like, okay, it's a difference of opinion. I can understand that, but yeah, I didn't get Keelan Russell one. That didn't make any
Yeah.
sense to me.
No.
So,
No.
all right. Hey, we're gonna be doing our quarterback rankings next. So again, when you see these, you will be mad. You will probably disagree with us. That's okay. I want to let you know that when I look at them, I'm mad and I don't like it either.
I disagree with myself.
Yes. Yes. So, this will be an experience for all of us. We will all go through it together, and you can ask us questions and on what we think, and then you can tell us why we're wrong in the chat, and then we'll try to, change things, and then somebody else will tell us we're wrong, and then everybody will just be wrong. So it'll be a fun experience. We're gonna love it. So stick with us. We will be right back and do our quarterback rankings for 2025. Homefield is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Homefield brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Homefield digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. If you ever miss a live episode, listen to the podcast. Upload these to podcast form for all you guys. We don't have the nice graphics for you, but we do our best to explain and say what's on the graphics. So listen to the podcast if you don't catch us live, or just go back on YouTube and listen to the rerun there. Either way, but if you don't catch us live, you can always listen to us after the fact, next morning, next day, whatever it is. So we appreciate it. All right, Zach, our quarterback rankings for 2025. I went ahead and put power rankings because I assume these will change. These are kind of way too early. We'll see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned, you and we agree on the top four. I think that's interesting. I could go either way on one and two. I put Drew Allar one. But if you argued with me hard that Aller should be, or Altmaier should be number one, I'm not gonna say too much about it. I do have a reason why I don't put Fernando Mendoza number one, but if you really wanted to, say that he is for sure, I'm not going to argue too much with you about it. I probably got 1 point on why he isn't. And then Dylan Raiola, he did show sparks to me last year for why I put him number four, and it looks like you have the same. So go ahead and give me your thoughts on number four, or on the top four.
On the top four. Yeah, I mean, I think people are already upset.
They're already angry. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So to be fair, I had a hard time between Aller and Altmaier. And I also had a hard time thinking, are Aller and Altmaier really the two best quarterbacks in the Big Ten? And I think the difficulty, and this was the prompt, so I'm blaming you, JR, but this is the prompt that you gave me, which is going into the season, not how you think they will end up. And I think this is still true. I think Drew Allar has much better upside from a professional standpoint than Altmaier. I think Altmaier, from a production standpoint, has been a little bit better than Allar. But I'm still going to value the flashes I've seen from Allar, especially in big games, over what I've seen with Altmaier. But it's razor thin, and I think you can make a really good case for Altmaier over Allar. That's just where I'm at. I don't think either of them will be top 2 by the end of the season, which might make more people mad, but that's where I'm at. Okay. I think Mendoza, like, I'm docking him because he's transferring and he has to learn a new system. That dude's good. That dude's really good. And I would not be surprised if he's a top 5 quarterback at the end of the season in the conference. I think I'm concerned about maybe lack of talent, but I think Cignetti will bring in enough to keep them afloat. I think they're going to have a harder year in general, but Mendoza, I thought Curtis Rourke was a perfect quarterback for Cignetti. I think Mendoza might be an upgrade at the position next year if he really does hit. And then I think Raiola gets a lot of flack for an offense that was just didn't have a lot of great pieces. He's going to have a second year under his belt. I just think Raiola, he's done enough to warrant being in the top 4. But again, this is top 4 going into the season. If he has a season similar to last year, this year, he will get passed up.
Who, Rayola? Who
Raiola.
you were saying
Yeah.
would get
Raiola.
passed up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every quarterback we have here in the top 4 has their reasons for why they could be number one. Probably more the top 3 here.
Yeah.
But then as you look at it, all of them probably have reasons why they shouldn't be number one as well, right? I think that all 3 of them have a good argument to be up there. I see a lot of people asking my thoughts on Mendoza. I think Mendoza's very good. I think that Mendoza struggled against some of the better teams on his schedule. So I'd like to see maybe some better games in those scenario. But at the same time, like he also performed very well in certain games that were close too. So maybe the competition wasn't as good, but he was also clutch and he did a good job. So I think you have to give him credit there. My main thing with Mendoza, and many people will say it's the offensive line, and I get that, but he was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in all of college football last year. And I get it. I get saying like, oh, well, that's all the offensive line's fault. And partially is the offensive line's fault, but I didn't watch a ton of Cal football. I caught it for most of the big games, but I also didn't see Fernando Mendoza. I talked about it with Miller Moss last year. He wasn't doing a whole lot of checks and shifting protection and stuff like that pre-snap. I didn't feel like I saw a ton of that
Mhm.
from Fernando Mendoza. So that's something he's going to have to learn. That's something he's going to have to get better at. And I think that you saw a lot of that with Curtis Rourke this year. That was one of the reasons why at the beginning of the year, Curtis Rourke had such a good offensive line, especially in pass protection, is because he was communicating with his guys. And I think that's something that Kirk Cinetti is going to make sure he instills in whoever is his quarterback. So I see Mendoza improving in that area, but at least coming into the year, because like you said, this isn't us projecting who's going to be the best at the end of the year. This is us saying right now, who do we think is the best 1 through 18 in the season. So that's my thoughts there.
Yep.
The next kind of tier I had, so I'm just going to go through mine, and then Zach, I'll let you go through yours. The next tier I had was kind of like, big, top, highly rated guys who maybe haven't shown a lot, or maybe they have shown us some and it hasn't been that great. So that's where I had Dante Moore, Julian Sand, and Bryce Underwood. And so for me, those guys, highly rated guys, they have a ton of talent, great arms, good bodies and everything like that, but they just haven't shown us that much. I put Dante Moore at the top because he does have a year of experience under his belt at UCLA, but it also wasn't a very good year, so I can't necessarily put him over Dylan Raiola, right? He is older than him, but he has the same amount of experience. And then from there, I went with some of the guys who have shown us good stuff against lesser competition in my mind, right? You're looking at Mark Gronowski playing in the FCS, Jada Mayava, who did most of his work at UNLV in the group of 5, and then you had Preston Stone at SMU when they were in the American. He didn't start this last year. Well, he started at the beginning of the year and got injured, but most of his good work was against them. And then from there on out, it was kind of just like pick 'em there at the bottom. I like Aiden Childs the way he ended the year, so I put him up there. Damon Williams, I like what he did at the end of the year, but it was a very small sample size. Athan Kaliakmanis, I felt like he really needed a run game in order to be successful. And so I don't know if he is like that top tier guy to be able to do that. And then Billy Edwards, it was a season for Billy Edwards last year. I don't know how much to make of the stuff around him. And then the 4 bottom guys are kind of the unproven guys: Joey Alguer, Justin Martin, Drake Lindsey, Malachi Singleton. Doesn't mean I don't think they're going to be good. They're just not super highly rated guys, and they're pretty much unproven at this point. Zach, before we get to yours, we do have a super chat from Yankee Wolverine. And oh my, $100 from Yankee Wolverine. Never did I think that turning on the super chats would give us $100, but thank you so much for that,
Wow.
Yankee Wolverine.
Yeah.
It cannot even express how much that means. He says, thank you for a great season of content. Really looking forward to where you guys go with Big Ten Huddle moving forward. And yes, congrats to your Buckeyes. I'm just going to say GB for that one. Okay, Yankee? I'm going to give you that. I'll say the initials, but I'm not going to say it for you. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Yankee, you are just have been so wonderful to us. Thanks,
Yes.
man. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate getting to go back and forth. I owe you a comment on my last episode over on YouTube, but you're the man, and I appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much, Yankee. We appreciate that, and we don't worry. We will be sure to keep bringing you guys good content, not just on live streams, but with videos and stuff like that as well. So thank you so much, Yankee. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, Zach. Your rankings. You want to talk about 5 through 18 there?
Yeah. I want to address two things before I get to the rest.
Okay.
One, Philip was giving me junk that Altmaier had better weapons than Allar. And I flat out disagree. I think Drew Allar would take Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant over any of the receivers, and twice on Sunday he would take those guys. His receivers stunk. Now, better
It's an
running
interesting
backs, better tight
conversation,
end.
though. It's
It is an interesting conversation.
Because, yes, by far, Illinois had the better wide receivers. Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant were by far the better wide receivers.
Yeah.
But you also had a better offensive line, a better tight end, and better running backs, which those help a quarterback. Obviously, the offensive line does, especially in pass protection. But there was a reason why, like 75% of Allar's passes were going to, running backs and tight ends. But that also does limit him as well. So I'm not saying you're wrong, Philip, but I do think it's an interesting conversation to try and boil it down. I would say I think Allar had more because offensive line is a big thing there. But yeah, Altmaier definitely had better wide receivers. There's no doubt about that. It's interesting, though. I appreciate that comment.
I may have misunderstood Philip's comment too. So sorry about that. The second thing, Terry was like, if you think Mendoza is going to be better than Curtis Rourke, why is he not number one? And I said it. There's always a concern when you see a transfer, and like, are they going to be able to pick up the system? Like we saw it. I was really high on Tanner Mordecai when he came over to Wisconsin, and he was not good at Wisconsin. And so I'm like, I'm just potential, right? And I've seen how good Mendoza can be, but also I have a little bit of trepidation. Whereas Aller's got year 2 with Kotelnicki. Altmaier is another year in Illinois system. Mendoza has to learn a new system. So I'm just giving those guys the benefit of the doubt. The way I went next was high level. I won't say high level starters, but consistent starters at either group of 5 or FCS levels that are transferring in. Gronowski and Preston Stone were both good at their previous stops. Preston Stone got Wally pipped at SMU. That's why Jennings took over. He got hurt, but he was good. He was very good for them at SMU. And I think it's a great, I can tell you the Northwestern fans are ecstatic that Preston Stone is their quarterback.
And they should be. After a year, Jack Lausch and Mike Wright, you should be ecstatic with Preston Stone.
Yeah. And Gronowski, 4 years of consistent play at South Dakota State, I think it is really worth mentioning. And the last player who was like that, who came over, actually the last, I think of that, not at Iowa, but in the Big Ten, Curtis Rourke. And why can't I think of the quarterback at Minnesota all of a sudden? Brosmer. Like, same type of thing. So, like, consistent guy, high level of FCS. Then I went with and then I'm expecting Mikey Keene to start. Good starter at Fresno State. And I think he'll at least be a good bridge quarterback. And then I went with the new bloods, Dante Moore, Julian Sayin. I think the only reason why I have more over saying is because he's going to be in his third year. He had a year to kind of sit behind Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. So I just think that's going to bode well, bode a little bit better for him. And also, he doesn't have to play Texas week 1. Like that is a factor. I thought Damon Williams was a little better than Maava in the little bit that I saw, but like barely. Again, both of them started like 2 games and 3 games respectively. Kaliak Manis, I don't know what to do with.
He was probably the hardest one for me to rank.
Yeah, because I think statistically there is a lot to like, and then you watch him and you're like, there's a lot to like at times. And then you watch him again and you're like, there's a lot not to like at times. And so I'm like, if he's just going to be who he's been, I can't, like, I just don't think he's going to be a top half quarterback. Like, I just don't. And I feel bad for that because I think Kaliak Manis has improved a little bit. And I think he's better under Kurt Chiraka, but I just don't know if he's going to be a guy. Like, I think who he is not a top half quarterback, and I'm not sure he's gonna progress into a top half quarterback. Billy Edwards, I think, could be really good for Wisconsin, but I have no idea how Wisconsin's going to use him. Aiden Childs is hot and cold. I think he could be a top half quarterback, but he's been so hot and cold that I'm like, we keep talking about his potential. We need to see it not be potential. And then the last 4, I'm like, I have no faith in you because of the program you're at or because of your pedigree. But, someone was getting on us about, sleeping on Drake Lindsay. This is me saying Drake Lindsay has not proven anything. But he goes out.
Drake Lindsay had a very good high school career. He put up very good numbers in high school. He just hasn't proven anything.
Yeah, there's no national
college football yet.
Yeah, there's no national hype to carry him, and so I'm like, okay, great. Like, if he goes 6-0 in the first 6 games, you can be darn sure he will be in the top half of our rankings.
Yeah. John Jacobs asked if Jack Lausch is leaving Northwestern. He is not. He's going to be the backup. I believe he joined the baseball team too, though. So I think this is one of those situations where he's, kind of content, even if he isn't the starter, because I think it's baseball. It's either baseball or lacrosse, one of those two. And Zach, our first compliment on our rankings. Can't believe Terry says, "Can I just say, you guys recall all these names? It's amazing to me." Thank you, Terry. We work very hard at it. Thankfully, there's no Nico Iamaialva, however you're saying it, in this conference. Not saying thankfully because I don't think he's good. Thankfully because I would really struggle with his name. I just call him Nico the entire time if I had to.
Ima Laviava.
And then John is asking if I can bring up the comment. Garbers is out at UCLA. So he graduated. He's out of eligibility. It is Joey Aguilar. Is that how you pronounce it? Aguilar?
Joey Aguilar, I think.
Aguilar.
Yeah.
He was a JUCO transfer to App State. He was there the past 2 years. And I don't think App State was as good as they normally were these past 2 years with him there. So I don't know what's going on with Jaden Rashada. There was talk about Jaden Rashada at UCLA at one point, but I don't know. And then Conrad is asking who will be Purdue's quarterback next year. I am projecting it will be Malachi Singleton. But they did bring in 2 or 3 guys that all probably are going to compete for that job. Malachi Singleton was the backup at Arkansas last year, and he actually came in for a game and did pretty well. So, we might be a little too low on him, making him 18th. But again, this is one of these. I guess I made him 18th. You made him 17th. This is another just one of those players that we haven't seen much of. Yeah. So he's kind of like Justin Martin, who's going to start at Maryland next year, where he came in for 1 game at UCLA last year. It did well. I wouldn't say he was great. I wouldn't say he was bad. He was good. He was well. So, all right. I think. Billy Tuesday is also saying that Wisconsin got the San Diego State QB that showed some
Yep.
potential. Yes,
Danny
Danny
O'Neil.
O'Neil, I believe is his name. I think it sounds like they're going to put him in the system for a year and then go to him after Billy Edwards. I think one of the reasons why Billy Edwards went to Wisconsin over Michigan was because the starting spot was more guaranteed at Wisconsin than it was Michigan. But, Danny O'Neil did show some potential, so there could be a thought process of him, possibly starting there. We'll see. It'll be a quarterback battle. I think Billy Edwards is probably going to win that, though. That's at least my prediction. So, Yankee having a conversation about who will be Purdue's quarterback next year is what makes this pod indispensable. You know what, Yankee?
We appreciate
that's
you,
what we're here
brother.
for. I don't know if there's any other podcast in all the country that is talking about Purdue's quarterback situation for next year in January.
Is Boiler Express even doing this yet?
No, they're all in basketball, man. They're not even giving a care about football in the world. So I did have somebody ask though what our ranking for Purdue would be in the transfer portal, and I still haven't gotten around to doing that. I can't imagine trying to rank the transfer portal. So all right.
So after the spring portal, we can do it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So again, these are not our rankings for what we think everybody will be at the end of the year. I think at the end of the year, you're probably going to see Julian Sain and Dante Moore move up some slots from where we have them. That's nothing against the guys in front of them. I just think that, typically those are programs that do very well and get that kind of recognition. I think that you're going to see probably 2 or 3 of the top 3. I guess I should say 1 or 2. 1 or 2 of the top 3 stay in the top 3, top 4. But you could also see some guys move down. So we'll see. Or I could be completely wrong and the top 3 stays the same all season long. We'll see. All 3 of those guys have a good amount of experience. We'll see what happens. Let me ask you this, Zach. Of all the quarterbacks who have experience starting, who are you most confident will be a top 5 quarterback next year of all the quarterbacks who have starting experience? So no Julian Sayin, no Bryce Underwood, nothing like that. Of all the guys with starting experience, who are you most confident will be at the very least a top 5 quarterback next year?
Probably. Oh man, probably Aller, because
Really?
I think he has the most infrastructure around him.
I was going to say Mendoza.
Yeah, I think both. So the thing about your question. Well, let me ask this: where would you rank them in terms of like end of season, like who you think most likely will succeed and stay in the top
Like
5?
projections?
Yeah.
I think Mendoza is going to be the best out of those top 3 at the end of the season. I have nothing against Altmaier. I have nothing against Aller. I just think that Mendoza is going to have a better offensive line and not like the best offensive line in the country or in the conference, but he's going to have a better offensive line. And I think, he's got some receivers coming back too. Like I have receiver concerns with Altmaier and Aller. It's not so much concerns about them. It's more concerns about the weapons around them. I feel better about Illinois' offensive line for next season, and I think Penn State is going to put out another good offensive line, and Penn State's going to have a good running game, so that's going to help Aller. But are you just going to find another Tyler Warren again? Luke Reynolds, 5-star, going to be very good, but is he going to be very good right away? Is it going to take him a year of starting or something like that? Like, I don't know. There are more question marks for me about the weapons for Penn State and Illinois than I have about the weapons for Indiana. Yeah, which is crazy to me to say, but
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, no, I see where you're coming. I think I'm still leaning Aller just because I think you have a more complete offense, I think, with their offensive line, with the running backs. And I do think Hudson gives them at least a suitable number 1 receiver. I wouldn't say he's a game-changing number 1, but he's certainly more in the mold of that than I think Keandre Lambert-Smith or Trey Wallace.
Yeah, it very well could be. I just have questions. That's all I have. We'll see how it goes at the end of the season.
Yeah, I
So
agree, but I agree. I think that's why I said, I think you're right. Mendoza, I think could be I think he could be one of the stars of the conference next year, especially if Indiana really does if they're able to maintain the momentum from this past year. I think he could end up taking home best quarterback of the Big Ten award.
yeah, yeah, you're all three of those guys there at the top have potential to be stars next season for the Big Ten. Luke Altmaier could lead his team to the playoffs next year, and he would
Yeah,
be an instant star if that
yeah.
happens, regardless of production. If he does that, he's gonna be an instant star. Yankee did ask. He says, "Guys, I'm sorry I'm late, but you're telling me the Michigan quarterback will be worse than the Iowa quarterback. I feel like Iowa would have about 10th in the league." Uh,
With Mahomes at quarterback.
with Mahomes. Couldn't see that. Sorry, my screen is really small. Yeah. So again, these are not projections for the end of the year. And also, I have Michigan's quarterback above Iowa, so no worries there, Yankee. You're looking at one guy in particular. One guy. It was harder. It was harder than I thought it was when I didn't get it right. In particular, but no, it doesn't mean I think they're going to be better at the end of the season. These are just like again right now, and I structured mine. I explained it at first. I don't want to go through it all again. So,
Yeah.
all right. Sound the Sirens podcast, which friends of the College Huddle and everything on the
Yeah.
College Huddle with us. So we need to get Sound the Siren
Hooligan.
back on here. Hooligan and all those boys. Top three or top five or sleeper who could be top three or top five? That is a very interesting question,
Yeah.
Zach. I'll run through some of my thoughts first while I let you kind of figure out your answer.
Oh,
Some of
thank
my
you.
thoughts are always the USC quarterback, Jaden Maava. I mean, I don't know if he's good enough, but he's going to put up numbers if he starts the entire year. I don't know if he's going to start the entire year, but if he does, he's going to put up numbers. It's going to be a good offense, so that could definitely happen. And I'm not just saying this to you guys because you commented. I really do think Damon Williams could be there. He did a good job last year, ended the year well. But probably my sleeper of all sleepers is honestly it's probably Aiden Childs.
Mhm.
Who knows how good Michigan State is going to be next year? They're bringing back some good guys. They have Nick Marsh on the outside. Jack Velling is coming back as well. He could increase his production from last year. And if Aiden Childs just plays within himself a little bit more, it's obvious he has arm talent. Oh my gosh, he has arm talent. He has the talent. He just has to put it all together, and Jonathan Smith has to deliver him a good offense to do that. So those are probably my thoughts right off the bat. Preston Stone as well could be. I don't know if I feel as confident in that one, just because it is Northwestern and they're going to be pretty run heavy, I think. But you
Mhm.
never know. It could be like Max Brosmer this past year, and he could come in and do some of that stuff. So um, Fisherman is saying. Fisherman changed his name to 2025 national champs. There you go. Saying sleeper. I expect Sayin to be in the top five. I know
Yep.
he's not top five here, but I expect him at the end to be a top five. So I don't know if I say sleeper, but yeah, he should be up there in my mind, just with the way Ohio State has done their quarterback development. Zach, who are some sleepers for you for top three, top five?
Yeah, not to pander to the question asker, but I do think Damon Williams is definitely one of those guys, especially with Boston coming back. And like they'll have to get someone to replace Giles Jackson, but like I think they've got receivers. I think again, infrastructure's big. He's a run pass threat. So I don't think offense is going to be a problem for Washington. Um, I am less high. I mean, I know you said the USC quarterback. I think we're probably more in agreement in this. I'm still not sold on Maava. I'm more sold on Williams than I am Maava. Um, but I would say probably Damon Williams. I do think Preston Stone. Other than that, like I agree. Like I kind of expect Dante Moore and Julian Sand to be up there. I probably the big one for me is if Underwood does start at Michigan, like that
You
he
think he's
would.
a sleeper to be up there?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think if he starts, I think by the end of the season, he's probably top five.
yeah. Yep. I agree. I agree. Silent Siren says a lot of young guys in the wide receiver room that will become well known over the course of the next year. Well, they're going to have to be. Jonte Cook moving on. That's a wild situation. I do not envy you guys going through that, the Jonte Cook experience. So,
Mm.
yeah, if I know anything about Jed Fish, it's that he's going to have some good wide receivers on his team. He always does. He always seems to be able to excel at that. So, and Billy Tuesday saying, not even sure Sane is going to be the starter. I guess I should have prefaced it. Whoever starts at Ohio State, I am expecting to be top five next year, just with the course track record of what they've done at Ohio State the past few years. So whether it's
I
him or Lincoln Keenholz or whoever it is,
it I'll just put it this way. I think if Ohio State's starting Lincoln Keenholz, it's going to be a really, really sad uh, title defense for Ohio State.
yeah. Dave's here. Dave, we appreciate you being here. He said, "Am I seeing
Yeah.
PJ Fleck bulletin board material?" Uh, Listen, I love me when PJ Fleck is good and Minnesota is good. So give me the bulletin board. I will give PJ Fleck plenty of bulletin board material if that means he goes 9-3 this year. Because a 9-3 PJ Fleck is what college football needs in my mind.
Yeah. How about a 4.99 super chat and a antidote of confidence to give to PJ Fleck? Like I
There we
think
go.
that is a 2 for 1 in the super chat realm. So thank you, Dave.
There you go. No, I talked about it earlier, Dave. I don't know what to make of Drake Lindsay yet. Again, these aren't projections for the end of the year. These are just kind of power rankings for now. Drake Lindsay had a very good high school career. He put up great numbers in high school. So there's obviously the potential for him to do that here in the college football season. There's also potential for Zach Pyron to also be the starter. I'm leaning that way a little bit more. But I know many Minnesota fans think Drake Lindsay's gonna be the starter, so I'm talking more about him because I don't want to make it uninteresting for Minnesota fans. But Drake Lindsay, big guy, good arm, should be a good quarterback eventually. I just don't know if it's gonna happen year one, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, PJ Fleck goes 9-3. I'm a happy guy because that means entertaining TV for me. So, all right. Anything else you want to get to, Zach, before we move on?
Mm. I no, I think we had an honest day's work.
Yankee says, yes, thank you. I can throw the ball to OSU receivers. Yeah, Yankee, you might be a top 10 quarterback in the Big Ten if you did that. So, all right. So let's see. Dave says, I don't think you guys know from Ohio State really how good the future of Minnesota is right now offensively, but then again, also do I. If they're really good, 10-2 playoffs, man. Again, if we got PJ Fleck in the playoffs, imagine a world with PJ Fleck and Brett Bielema both in the playoffs. Like if you thought that the SEC exploded with Kirk Cinetti in the playoffs, oh my. If we get Fleck and Bielema both in the playoffs, the South would explode, and I
I
would
was
love
gonna
it.
say, could you imagine if they get matched up with South teams and then they win?
And then they win. Yes, that would be
It'd
fantastic.
be amazing.
Yes,
I want Brett Bielema versus Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in the playoffs, and I want Brett Bielema to smoke that man, like just oh,
that would
it'd
be
be it would
fantastic.
be beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
and Phillips right. If we get a rematch in the playoffs, yeah, that's what we need. That's what I'm rooting for this season. Obviously, I'm rooting for Ohio State, but that's what I'm rooting for. Possibly just as much, if not more, than Ohio State is for Brett Bielema to face Shane Beamer in the playoffs and then PJ Fleck to make the playoffs. Because
Mhm.
that is what anti SEC needs. That's what we need.
You know,
Oh
I
man.
I just think we really do need to find a way to get the Kings of the North guys on this show or us go on there somehow because I feel like we have the same mission, except Doug Maurice has swords
Yeah,
and it's awesome. Every week they
and
tell
Doug
the SEC
Maurice
to
goes
cram
on
it.
the SEC and Doug Maurice goes on the SEC shows and argues with them. Honestly, that's the most Doug Maurice content I watch. Not that I don't watch Kings of the North, I do, but I cherish anytime he goes on an SEC podcast or an SEC show because it is just perfect.
It's
I love it.
it's he is not afraid. I love it. He made Sean McDonough so uncomfortable at the Sugar Bowl press tour. Like, it was glorious because he was like, "Well, you said this thing." He's like, "Well, I believe what I said was Indiana and all these other conferences shouldn't be assumed." It's like, "Yeah, but you said Indiana. Like, you said Big
Yeah.
Ten." And it's like, "Well, but then I did mention SEC." No, but you said, "Well, maybe not the SEC." And he's like, "Well, I mean, it was so awesome
Yep.
to watch Doug just be like, "Yeah, but you didn't actually say that. You said
Yeah.
this." It's
Look,
great.
that's why you like and subscribe. So that way, not only do we have Doug going on SEC podcasts and destroying their takes, but you also have me and Zach going on there as well. I can't promise I'll be as good as Doug, but I would do my very best. So if you like and subscribe, I would do my very best.
We don't have swords, but we will have NCAA stink shirts coming out soon.
Yeah, we actually do need to get those in the off season.
We do.
That needs to be goal number one in the off season.
There we
SEC
go.
stink shirts.
There we
So.
go.
All right, Zach. I think we put in a good podcast tonight. We've gone our normal about hour and a half. I always schedule it for an hour, but we always tend to go about an hour and a half. So great job Sunday night, and Sunday night's always a little bit more lively. We get more people in here, and it's a good time. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the people who compliment us and to the people who tell us about how terrible our rankings are. We know. We got angry putting them together as well. So Zach, you have anything you want to get to before we get out of here?
I just want to say, hey, thanks Yankee and Dave for our first ever super chats. We really appreciate you guys, and we appreciate everybody in the chat. So thank you guys so much. Really love just getting to chat ball with you guys.
Primarily because I didn't know they were not on, and somebody told me last stream that they weren't on, and I was like, oh well, I guess I should turn the super chats on. Who would have thought? Novel concept there. So Philip with the idea. Fire ESPN out of a cannon shirt. We need to get like a design contest or something like that. We need to get you guys like designing t-shirts for us. That'd be awesome. So Philip, no, not 2.5 hours. Again, Dylan is the specialist for 2.5 hours. That is an episode where we will go in depth into the Purdue quarterback situation.
The Purdue State of the Union episode will be Russ and DK and us and
that'll be a good one. So, all right, everybody, we appreciate you being here. Power Rankings episode tomorrow morning. Me and Kent, 10 a.m. Might get pushed back to 10:15, 10:30. It just kind of depends. Us taking our kids to school and stuff like that. So we'll see. And 10 a.m. Eastern time. Tuesday night, me and Zach again, 9 o'clock Eastern time, p.m. I forget what we're talking about that episode. I had it written down someplace, but we're going to talk about another big topic. We'll get through some news and notes, stuff like that. I think we'll probably go a little bit more in depth about who Ohio State will hire for defensive coordinator in that one. And then just more general Big Ten football talk in that one. And then if you haven't caught us yet, Fridays at 1 o'clock is when we're doing our second basketball show. We do recaps of the week. We talk about previews of the weekend, all that good stuff. So check us out Fridays at 1 o'clock. The link for the basketball channel, if you guys like Big Ten basketball as well, is in the description. You can go down there. Please subscribe to that channel, and that way you can get all the Big Ten content, not just football, but basketball as well. And Billy Tuesday saying thanks, guys. Thank you, Billy Tuesday. Thank you for everybody who watches. Thank you that we can, talk Big Ten basketball, Big Ten football with you guys. Truly is awesome. So we appreciate you, and have a good one. See you next time.